So what's the reason that we're seeing so much loading when we go between one user, the list of users, back to the same user, back to the same list of users, and back to the same user again? Why do we see so much loading? Why are our components not remembering anything? Well, that's not a component's job. When we transition from one component, and I'm on the member detail component here, and I go back to the member list component, and now I'm on this component, as soon as we move away from this component, everything inside it is destroyed. And that's just how components work. And if we want our components to be able to remember stuff, then they really need to get it from a service, because our services are singletons and they are instantiated when our application starts, and any properties or values that we have inside that service, they don't go away. The singleton service are not destroyed when we transition between one component and another. And we're going to take a look at storing effectively our members in the service. So even if a component is destroyed, such as our member list when I go to this user, it doesn't matter because that's still going to be inside the service. But we still need to accommodate the fact that the user might refresh the page, which does require us to go to the API server again and go and get the data, because when we do this, then our service is destroyed and then it's created again once our application starts up. So let's go back to VS Code and take a look at what our options are for dealing with this. So I'm just going to open up the member service, and inside here we have, well, just our methods to go and get the users. But supposing we created a members property inside here, and we could use a signal for this actually. So I'm going to create a signal and bring that in from Angular Core. And we're going to store inside our signal a member array, and we're going to give it an initial value of an empty array. So when we go out and get our members, instead of storing them in our component, we could simply set the members inside this signal. And our get members, when we make an HTTP request, of course, we get an observable back from this. And for this one, we're going to handle the subscription inside the service instead of inside the component. Because we're using the members, then the component can use the members signal. And all we need to do inside the service is make sure we get the members and store them inside there. So we won't actually need to subscribe from the component. We'll just need to call this method from the component. Let's take a look at how this is going to work. So then I could just subscribe inside here and say next, and I can take the members and say list.members and use the set method of the signal and put our members inside there. And then to use this, let's open up our member list components, which will have some errors now, no doubt. And inside here, for sure, we've got the subscription. We no longer need that. So we can remove the subscription here. So we're really just calling the members. And I'm missing the closing bracket there. So we'll call get members in our ng on init. And we no longer need our members here because we're going to get this from the signal. And we can even use our member service directly inside our template file as well. And if we go to our template, our member list component template, then instead of member of members, we can say member of member service dot members, and because this is a signal, we use the parentheses there, and then we're getting our members from the signal now. And inside our member list component, because our signal is going to be updated from what's going on in the service, so when this is updated, anything that's listening to it is also going to react to those changes. Then we can simply add a check inside our ng on init here and say if, and we'll say if member service or list.memberservice.members, and we'll check to see if its length is greater than 0 or not greater than 0. This should be equal to 0. Only then will we load the members. That means we don't have anything in our members array signal. So then we do need to go and load the members. But otherwise, we'll have them in our signal, and we don't need to go and load our members. So let's check the impact this has had. And if we go to our browser and we refresh the page, make sure everything is still fine, and I go to a different component, that means our member list has now been destroyed. But if we go back to our member list, then it's instant now. We're no longer loading. But we've still got an issue with our member detail, so we do need to do something with that. But now we can go backwards and forwards to our member list. So let's take a look at the member detailed request, where we go and get an individual member. Now what we're doing here is we're returning an observable. And I think I'd still like to keep this as an observable, at least for the time being, because if we take a look at our member detail component, we've got a fair bit of stuff going on here. We've got our member photos being configured there as well. And I think using or attempting to do this with signals might overcomplicate things for what we're trying to achieve right now. So I'm going to take the path of least resistance for this one and still continue to return an observable to this component from our service if we have the member inside this member array. So for this one, the get member, I'm going to say const member equals, and I'm going to say list.members, and it's a signal, so we use the parenthesis, and we can use the find method, and we'll say x goes to x.username, that's equal to the username we're passing in to the parameter here. And the find method returns either the value, in this case the member, or it will return undefined. So all we need to do here is really check for undefined, and if it is not, then we can return effectively the member that we've found in our members array. So we'll check and we'll say if member is not equal to undefined, then we're going to return, well, we can't return just a member, as this isn't going to work. This is not an observable of member, and we need this to be an observable of member for our member detail component. Otherwise, we're going to get this kind of error. So we need to change this to be an observable, and we can use an RxJ operator for this, or an RxJS operator, I should say, and we can use of, and this will return the member as an observable. So if we go back to our member detail, now we don't have the error inside here. Otherwise, the rest of this can stay the same. We're still returning an observable from our HTTP GET, and if we have the member inside our members array, then we're simply returning an observable of that member. And if we go take a look, and let's just refresh the page, make sure everything is clean inside here, and I pick a member and instantly load. Go back to the matches, instant, pick another member, and now we have that functionality as well. But supposing I update the member, then we also need to consider this as well. And let's go back to our member service. So on the occasion that we update the member, then we also need to update the members array inside our signal with that new information. And then anything that's listening to this signal can react to the update. Although since we'll have to transition between components, it's not something that's going to be stand out obvious that's happening, but we'll still do this anyway and make sure the member array is updated with the new information after a user makes an update. So to do this, we're still working with an observable at this point because that's what we get back from an HTTP request. So we're going to need to use the pipe method inside here. Now, another RxJS operator we can use if we want to use a side effect with our observable, but we don't want to change or transform its value in any way, is we can use the tap from RxJS. And this allows us to specify a callback function to do something with the observable without changing the observable. It's just really a side effect once we get this back from our API. And in fact, we're not getting anything back from our API, but that's irrelevant here because we have the information we need that's being updated. So we can use this tap function, and inside here we can say this.members, and we can effectively update our signal. So we can call the update method, and then this works with the previous values that we have already inside our members array. So we can get effectively the previous value. So we can update the value of the signal based on its current value and notify any dependents. So anybody that's listening to the signal will be notified that there's been a change. So we're going to say that we're going to work with our members in this case. So we'll add the arrow, and then we're going to say members.map, and effectively we're going to loop over each member, find the one that matches the member username, and swap that member with this one, and then otherwise just return the existing member in the array. So we're going to say m for each member that we're going to loop over, and we're going to say m.username, that's equal to the member.username. Then we'll use a ternary, and if it is equal, then we want to effectively use this member, the updated member that we're passing in. So we're going to set that to member, otherwise it's just going to be m for the original member that we're not updating here. And okay, let's just move this down because I'm going off the edge of the screen here. And that should accommodate the updates to our signal as well. So signals are quite simple, just two ways of using these really to set an update. Well, I say they're quite simple. There are other signals that we'll look at later, like computed, for instance, that we can work out a new signal based on an existing signal. But in terms of an actual signal, then we only really need to set them and update them. And in this case, we're just updating. So we don't need to do anything else there. So let's go back to our browser and let's see. I'll just refresh the page just in case. So we go and get our data from the API. And if I go to Lisa's profile and I edit the profile, then I've got some text inside here, hello 1. And I'm just going to update this to say hello 2. And I'm going to save the changes. Not a big change, just want to make sure that this is persisting across our signal, and we don't need to go out and load the member from our API when we're viewing this inside our browser. So I'll go back to matches, and if I click on Lisa's profile to view the profile, we see hello 2. So that change is persisting, and if I edit the profile, hello 2. So our changes are persisting inside there as well. And we've removed a lot of loading that was going on after we added our fake delay. And that's what we're trying to achieve there. So that brings us to the end of this section. So we can now go back and save our changes into source control. So I'll remove all of this stuff and I'll click on the source control tab and I'll stage all of these changes. And you can tell I've messed up in this lesson because I've got some going down and some going up. So I'm going to be forcing the commit here, but I'm going to give it a commit message of end of section 10 and commit these changes. And then I'm going to need to do some forcing into GitHub. So I won't demonstrate this bit. I'm going to do it from the command line because I need to force this push into GitHub. And it's not a good thing to do, so I'm not going to demonstrate it. But I'm kind of tweaking the repository here. But this does bring us to the end of the section. So after this, we'll have a summary to wrap up.